Welcome, everybody. I'm Rick DiClemente with starself.com, another edition of Astrology Unplugged. Tonight is a very special topic. I'm coming to you from Pittsburgh. These are free and they're replayed every Friday on YouTube under my name. If you would like to join us free any Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, simply go to starself.com/unplugged. That will give you the links to join us on Thursdays. Tonight's a very special night to me, and it came to me with some kind of urging recently. It's going to all be about writing this book that Liza and I wrote. And there's going to be some details about how we wrote it. But mainly what we're going to be talking about, I really realized, is the real revolution that took place with 3 signs. And I really felt that we took 3 years to write this. And as we worked over it, I mean, we did the work over like a meat tenderizer. We did the work over on each sign. And the book is very small. It's only 181 pages. And it's the essence of each sign. And the signs that we're going to be finding that were really, let me see here, I believe were really revolutionary were the sign of Gemini, the sign of Cancer, and the sign of Virgo. I didn't plan it that way, but those ended up being the 3 signs that got worked over. Now, I had grown this knowledge for 35 years just through being curious about the sun signs and talking about them somewhat. And after about 30 years, I started lecturing a lot about them. And the lecture was largely what you see in the book before I met Liza. And then we realized that one day I need to just put this on paper because I was burning out just doing reading and I was trying to reach out to a larger crowd. So I threw it down on paper and it was really haphazard. And you know me, I go off on tributaries and I try to stay to the point. And then Liza was brought in, and Liza's so excellent at not only editing, but she's so literal and she's so good with grammar and literature. And that's when I found another side to Liza, which I didn't know was there, because she's a tough editor. And so she put each sentence, each word, each paragraph through its steps. And I learned all about an Aquarian and what kind of tough mind they have. And because of her, my Mercury's in Sag. I was more like, hey, it's good enough, let it go. And her Mercury's in Capricorn, and she wasn't going to just let it go. So I would write a sentence or a passage, and I'd say, and she'd go, okay. So through working together, we really had to work hard to get the right word, the right phrase. And I mean, there were evenings where the whole evening was spent on one paragraph. And I think you can sense that when you read the book, because it's very smooth, it's unruffled, it really flows easily. The book is called The Exquisite Zodiac. It was produced independently through CreateSpace, a subsidiary of Amazon. It is available through Amazon. It is available on my website, which is starself.com. The book is $9.99. The Kindle version is $4.99, and on my website you can get the PDF version for free. And I don't think that's going to last much longer. I think I'm going to get rid of the PDF, and I'm going to bring the Kindle version down to $2.99. I'm not sure yet. Anyhow, when this book was written, the original title, the working title, was Pisces, the Ultimate Sign. And what I meant by that was Pisces, the ultimate state. And I changed the title because I didn't think people would understand it. I didn't want to imply that one sign's better than another, which is not. But through the observation of this book, it's kind of like, you have to choose the word so carefully, the soul becomes born and simple in Aries, and it gains complexity and universality as the soul expands and gets to the final stage of Pisces. And what I meant by calling Pisces the ultimate sign is simply that within the state of Pisces are all other states. And the first 11 states of the zodiac have to do with ego and embossing the ego and improving the ego and making the ego broader. It's only when you get to the final 2 signs where the real change happens. The 11th stage of Aquarius, which is symbolic of the total man, but still unfulfilled. And that final leap, which is the biggest leap of all, which is between the 11th and the 12th sign, between Aquarius and Pisces. And that's the state where you give up the self. So for 11 stages, you're fighting for the self. You think you're helping, but all you're doing is increasing separation. And the Pisces are born with this sense of oneness. Their gift is a sense of faith and belief, and they're not competitive. And they don't have much ego drive. Matter of fact, that's what keeps them down the most, is not having an ego drive. Anyway, we'll get to that point. But I want to talk to you about what we ran in along the way. And in order to do that, I'm going to be referring to this graph quite a bit. Yeah, this graph is largely produced in many ways inside the book, and this is my main teaching zodiac, and this is the theme of the book. Before I get to that, I want to share with you what it means to call it the Exquisite Zodiac. It doesn't mean it's pretty, even though there's a beautiful diamond. It doesn't mean it's complex. It means it's quantumly entangled. It means it's amazingly intricate, like you see when you see beautiful lace work. The diamond was chosen as a symbol that you look in one facet, you see the whole diamond. You look in another facet, it's different, but you see the whole diamond. So it's very much holographic. When you examine any part, you see the whole, but the part is true too. And I can't go much further with that other than getting you very confused. But that's what this is about. It's been out about 7 years. The mistake I made, and I took a lot of time structuring how the book would be. The mistake I made is I put too much beginning stuff in it. And in the beginning chapter, there's a lot about the signs and the modes and the elements and all that. And even though beginners need that, what has happened is too many people look at that book and think it's another beginner's book. And it's a very fine book for beginners, but it's also extremely advanced. And it should be read by people who are very advanced, because Liza and I dug down to the essence of each sign, what we call the archetypal essence. This is why you're in a room full of Leos, and you say to yourself, well, these Leos are like 9 different types of people. But if you think about the archetypal essence, you'll see that one thing they have in common. There's no doubt about it. If you're in a room full of Scorpios, they could be very different, but you drill down to that real essence. And that's what the book's about. It's like Linda Goodman's sun sign is sun sign's light. And she did a marvelous job, both of us from West Virginia, by the way. But she made it very colorful and balancing. What is a Leo boss like, and what is a Virgo child like? And it was very poetic. And she did a really nice job. She still maintains #1 in astrology books. What we did and what I did was go much deeper into when I talk about Leo, I talk about Gemini. I'm not talking about the 3 Geminis you know. I'm not talking about the 6 Virgos you know. I'm talking about 150 of them that you know. Because only when you know about 100 or 150 of them can you start to see what's really in common. So when I'm talking to Barbara, I know I'm talking to a Libra woman, but I can also hear in her voice other parts of it that are not Libra. And I know what's the Libra and what's not. When I talk to Mark, I know I'm talking to an Aries, but I also know there's a lot of Pisces there. I've done this so long, I can hear that. So when I talk tonight about the signs, that's what I'm talking about. And I encourage you to get away from your friends. And what I mean by that is, if you only know one Virgo, and you're going to end up associating Virgo-ness with the Virgo you know, of course. But I'm encouraging you to meet other Virgos, to be open, and then to start to ask yourself, what is that element that they share? That's what the book's about. The book is based on 2 really important ideas, and a third one in a way. The first idea is that the soul is born in the sign of Aries. And it does not mean you take your first lifetime as an Aries and you go through then Taurus and then Gemini, as some people erroneously think. But when you analyze the nature of the signs, the natures are very young in the early part of the zodiac. That's why almost every Aries you see, the first sign, they have a very youthful spirit. I was talking to a woman yesterday. You know how when you try to analyze Jack Nicholson? Jack Nicholson is born between Aries and Taurus. And I happen to think he's an Aries because we don't have his birth time. But you know how he can be kind of complex and all that? You know how there's this kind of ornery little innocence about him? That's what an Aries is. It's very refreshing and it's very uncomplicated. It's the infant of the zodiac. And Liza and I tried really hard not to offend anybody, and I think we did a really good job. We really tried hard by not trying to say one sign's more advanced than the other, one sign's further along than the other. But the early signs of the zodiac are simpler, they're not as complex, and they're what I called self-oriented. So when you look at the beginning of the zodiac, the beginning are about me. The first half is about me. The zodiac always starts here, and it always has Capricorn at the top, and it always ends in Pisces here. Any other drawing is incorrect. This is how the zodiac is. Early sign becomes a little more complex, becomes a little bigger and more complex, becomes a little bigger and more complex, etc., until you get to the final 3 signs, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and they're very complicated. They're very big. And what I mean by big is I mean universal. The top half of the zodiac is other-oriented. I mean, they can stick to themselves and they can be obsessed with themselves. They can be selfish. But their main instinct is self plus others, where the beginning of the zodiac is mainly about the self. So those things are delineated very clearly in the book. Now, the second thing, which I thought was the most important, which revealed itself to us more and more as we continued to write, was each sign is a definite reaction against the sign before it. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's like a certain sign is busy being itself, and it's busy being itself, and it's doing what it can. And after a while, it just can't do it anymore, and it just can't do it, and it explodes into the next sign. And each sign is so different from the sign next to it. This is why you'll usually have a hard time with the signs next door to you. And it's going to behoove us tonight to have this diagram up a lot so you can understand. So you may be a Taurus and have a really hard time with Aries. You probably have a hard time with Gemini. If you're a Gemini, you may have a hard time with Taurus and have a hard time with Cancer. That's very common. Another thing, if it's not your case, many people who are Virgos have planets in Libra. Many Virgos have planets in Leo. It's the nature of the planetary orbits. So a lot of times, like Karen DeBerry has a lot of Leo and a lot of Virgo, so she's got a lot in both. But usually you're not real comfortable with the sign next to you because you're based on opposite principles. For example, here's the fiery Aries, here comes the Taurus, and the Taurus needs to settle down and grounded. Then the Gemini comes along and it's very flighty and it wants to fly through the air. And then the water comes along and the emotion of Cancer, etc. So those are the two main principles of the book. It's like the youth growing up through different stages, and each sign coming out of the essence of the sign before it. The other thing that I thought is extremely important, and I really stressed it heavily in the book, and I'm going to keep stressing it all the time to beginners and advanced students, is you cannot learn enough about the oppositions. The polarities are so important to understand the Aries Libra, why they're different, why they're similar, to understand the connection Taurus Scorpio, Scorpio Taurus, Gemini Sag, Cancer Capricorn. And there's a whole chapter on this. It's really important if you understand this, especially if you're going to start translating, you'll start to see why. Aries is all about the self. Well, Libra is the Aries of the second half of the zodiac. Taurus, about my stuff. Scorpio, about our stuff. Gemini, me and my mind. Look what I discovered. Sag, us and our thoughts and our philosophy. Look what we discovered. Cancer, me and my family. Take care of me. Capricorn, me and the world. I take care of the world. Leo, me and my creativity. Aquarius, us and our creativity. Virgo, Pisces, this is by far the most important one. Virgo, service by doing what's right versus wrong. Pisces, doing what's right because that's all there is. There are no opposites. This is all opposites. They're all opposites. This is about delineation and segregation. This is about integration, exclusion, inclusion. So those three storylines became the main part. And I really think if I would just mind dreaming here for a moment, I really think if I put out a new version and leave the elemental parts out, I think the book would be received in a much more advanced way. And you will read in the reviews on Amazon, when more advanced astrologers did read it, they got an awful lot out of it because it's deeper than people think. And we tried to condense it. It was just the nature of Liza and myself to write economically. Okay? So, technically, the book was written down on paper, and Liza is very much a paper person, and I'm very much a computer person, having programmed for 20 years. And I handed her the paper, the manuscript, and I had the horrible experience of going in the other room and listening to her in the kitchen go, tape, scotch tape, scotch tape. What are you doing in there? Don't come in here. Because I just don't have the ability to think concisely in the fluid story, and that is a beautiful part of Aquarius. They are really good at that. They're really concise storytellers. They don't tell things twice. They don't miss something. They just make a nice story fit. And I kept telling Liza, I'm an astrologer. I'm not Shakespeare. And she kept saying, but you are Shakespeare. She's denying it. She kept telling me, well, yeah, but she's such a phenomenal reader that she just had really high standards. So when I got a sentence or a passage written that she liked and she really liked, I started dancing because I knew that must really be good. I'm watching Karen here because Karen's just finished a book, so she knows what I'm talking about. I don't care what your partner was like. There's a lot of people we know, aren't there, who want to write a book, aren't there? And there aren't that many that did it because it's a bitch. It's a lot of work. Anyhow, I'm real glad we did. So the book is divided into 6 chapters. Elkie, I'm glad you made it tonight. There are many parts to it, but those are the 3 main parts. So I'm going to walk you through how even though I had a real good, solid, deep understanding of these, when I started to write, I had to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm going to give you a tour of what I went through as I did this. And by doing so, I'm walking you through it. Because I'm a Capricorn with a lot of Aquarius and Mercury and Sag, and I'm very sensitive to the collective mind. How does the great mindset work? You'll start to see what I mean as I go through. And when I go, I'll pause on each one. You need to be thinking of the Geminis you know, the Cancers you know, and if you listen very closely, you're going to really learn a lot about these signs. Because when you think about it, signs are weird things. How in the world did God give us this prism that divides things into 12? He didn't divide them into 11, and he didn't divide them into 13. 12. And that's because there are 3 modes and 4 elements. 3 times 4 is 12. The cardinal signs, fixed signs, the mutables. Earth, air, water, fire. It's miraculous, and that's the one other reason that the diamond was chosen as the image on the front. So back to the diagram. The book also divides things into quadrants. This is the first quadrant, which is about the stuff of life that we make a person out of. This is about putting a person together, or the development. But notice we're on the bottom half. The bottom half is about me, my stuff, self-oriented. The top half is about us. This quadrant is all about relationships of all types. This quadrant is beyond relationships. This is a quadrant of me and the world. So when I started to write Aries, cardinal fixed sign, that's what this means. They're a cardinal from this group. They're a fire sign from this group. They're a cardinal. You see the cardinal cross, cardinal, 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 cardinal. Those are the leaders of the zodiac. They do it through fire. They do it through water, emotion. The Libras do it through air, mentality. Capricorns do it through earth, or practicality. So when I started into Aries, and see, it's so easy to read this cheap stuff. It's so easy to read this glib stuff. Aries people are selfish. Aries people are about me, me, me. Aries people are reckless. They like to speed. All these things you read, all these reputations you guys have, all of us. Well, where does it come from? Well, I had a real epiphany in the sign of Aries. I had to become one to write it. And I really don't know that many Aries people in my life. Aries is simplicity for simplicity's sake. In the book, I claimed it was the hood ornament on the car. They're right out front. Oftentimes, they have a prominent nose. They have a prominent forehead. They have a very open, wide-eyed innocence, which is symbolic because they want to experience the here and now, and they can't stand being complicated or slowed down. That's because they're so adventurous. So I had to realize here's a sign, as far as the sun sign, that's not interested in what other people are doing. Now, some of our greatest thinkers ever, our most universal thinkers, have been Aries. And that's not because of Aries. That's because of the Pisces and Aquarius in their chart. The later energies, the later signs ruled by the later planets are the big boys. Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. They're the big ones that make us universal. And when you see an Aries who is universal, it's not because they're Aries. Matter of fact, next week, I think I'm going to repeat the chart I read yesterday for a wonderful woman who's in Aries with a lot of Aquarius and Pisces. And it was one of the greatest readings I ever had because she was such a great example. But getting back to Aries, there has to be a sign that is fascinated that it exists. And Aries exists because of what we call the fall from heaven. In my opinion, in whatever vague way, there is isness, there is allness, which is Godness. And God, whatever you want to call it, wanted to experience itself. Automatically, you got duality. Automatically, God had to create something that's non-God in order to experience. Automatically, you got illusion, you got separateness, and the rest of us spend the rest of our lives trying to get back. That's how Aries was born. That's why it's the spark. It's the early fire sign. It has to do with me. And once God took form, the ego said, wow, look what I can do. And it's that simple. And that's why the book is short, because I got down to the instinct. That's why it's that simple. I told you many times about my son when he was really young and he put a nail. I gave him a board and a nail and a hammer, right? Simple story, beautiful. And he took the nail and he hit it with the hammer and the nail stuck in the board and he took it to Dad and said, look at what I did. That's Aries. And I realized that's it. It doesn't mean they can't do complex things. It means they live in a very simple universe where there's them and look what they did. And what would you do if you just came out of oneness and all of a sudden you had your freedom? You would walk around being fascinated by yourself. Now, some of them can take it too far, like with all signs, and become ego-centered. It's all about me, 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 me. Would you like to hear what I did? Me, 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 me. But that's the essence. And if they run you over, it's not because they wanted to run you over. They're not jealous of you. There is no you. There's only them. And would you move aside, please? Step aside, please. I got things to go. I'm going somewhere. It's that simple. And I had to realize I'm an Aries and that's what I do. And it's all based in love and it's all based in goodness and it's all based in proper thought and proper motivation. But if you get in their way, things can get ugly and yeah, they can be clashing with you. And that's why the secret, if you're ever dealing with an Aries, is always put it on the table. The problem with people mixing with Aries is people pussyfoot. They don't want you to pussyfoot. Put it on the table. Waldo, I'm pissed off about this. Okay, it's on the table, it's done, we're done. But other signs like the Cancers and the Pisces and the Libras, oh, well, yeah, I thought maybe we'd talk about this. No, with the Aries, get it out. I got things to do. It's that simple. They're here to have adventure, to experience what they can do. Period. All other qualities come from that. So you can see that soul up there, buzzing around. Yeah, Susan says the original tell it like it is. That's exactly right. They're not trying to be mean. They're just telling like it is because that's how it is. Now, I'm going to tell you my secrets, which are from great experience. Aries think they're right an awful lot of times, and they're not. Okay? Leos think they're right all the time, and they're not. Virgos don't think they're right, but they always are. And Scorpios know they're right, but they want you to think they're wrong. Those are the 4 truths about knowing what it is. I cannot go into questions right now. I'm sorry. Save your questions till after the hour. So what happens to the soul? We realized, and this was an education to me, we realized that not only the first 3 signs were the elemental sign, this is the fire sign. This is something Liza taught me. This is the fire sign. Taurus is the earth sign. Gemini is the Gemini sign, the air sign. And Cancer is the water sign. So already I blew my cool because I was thinking there were only 3 of them. There couldn't be 3 because there's 4. 4 elements. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. So automatically what I was thinking was 3 was 4, which is what caused the revolution. That's why I told you in the whole book, the biggest change that happened was right there. By far, in the Gemini thinking and the Cancer thinking. Took months. Scorpio was written in 1 day. These things took months. Virgo took months. That's how hard Gemini and Cancer were. But anyhow, getting back to Taurus. You've gone from cardinal to fixed, which means fixed, and you've gone to earth. What was cardinal fire, like fireworks, is now fixed to the earth. You see what happens when you change from one sign to the other. The Taurus said, well, while you're up there being Mr. Fireworks, you got to have a home. You've got to get anchored or you're going to get burned out. So that's why when I thought about Taurus, and I learned this, the 4 fixed signs. Fix means to affix, to give definition, to give meaning. They're in a cross. Taurus and Scorpio, Leo and Aquarius. And after all was said and done and the book was written, somebody pointed out to me that all 4 fixed chapters are very small. And they are. The Taurus chapter, Scorpio 1 day. I thought Scorpio would take months. Oh my God, Scorpio is so intense, so complex. 1 day. Leo, Aquarius. And the reason the fixed signs are easy to write about is the complex part is the cardinal part. The really complex part is when you cross the thick line. So you'll notice these thick lines that go through the zodiac. This is relative to a birth chart. Ascendant, descendant, midheaven, nadir. Self plus others, me plus you, me plus us. Where I've been, where am I going? What's my past? What's my future? So therefore, the real complexity was when the solid line was crossed. That's why Aries is so complex compared to what happened before. Cancer is so complicated compared to what happened before. And when Virgo goes into Libra, and when Sag goes into Capricorn. So the book is a constant revisiting of these principles of this diagram. So I realized, well, not only did I say Taurus is down to earth, but I did state something revolutionary. I still do not have it worked out, and I don't understand completely. And let's go back to the diagram. I'll show you what I mean. In the old days, which was Saturn was the outermost planet. Saturn was the outermost planet before Galileo, because Galileo brought us a telescope. Well, we had 7 planets and we had 12 signs. What were we going to do? We knew the sun was the ruler of Leo. We knew the moon was the ruler of Cancer. We knew Mercury ruled Gemini and Venus ruled Taurus and Venus ruled Libra. We had to give planets dual rulership. I can't explain to you what it means, but a planet has a sign has a ruling planet. A planet rules a sign. Mars and Aries are very similar, but one's a planet, one's a sign. They're very like, but yet they're different. But we only had 7 planets in the old days. Now we got about 89, which is why Pluto got demoted. We had to start doubling duty. So the sun rules Leo, the moon rules Cancer, Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, Venus rules Taurus and Libra, Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. We didn't have a Pluto back then. Jupiter rules Sag and Pisces, because we didn't have a Neptune back then. Saturn ruled these 2 signs, because we didn't have a Uranus back then. So I took it upon myself through great evidence. I only print things or state things when I have evidence. That's why my students may be a little frustrated with me when they say, well, this is that, and that's that. And I say, how do you know? I want to know how you know. Did you talk to 9 people? Did you interview it? How do you know? It can't just be an interesting thought to you or some guy you read. You got to prove it. All right. So after, and I'm going to come back to the main screen here so I can see Karen DeBerry's face. After a lot of experience, and Karen is not here? Okay. After a lot of experience, it became very clear to me that the Earth is the ruler of Taurus. Well, this shakes up everything, because in every book you read everywhere, Taurus is ruled by Venus. Well, years later now, I'm coming to believe that Taurus is ruled by the Earth in some ways, and it's still true that Venus rules Taurus in some fashion, and I don't clearly understand it, and it'll take us astrologers years to figure out why. But Taurus is very down to earth, and they got this urge to plant themselves. It's amazing how many Tauruses I've talked to, they got to be outside with their hand in the soil. And this is one reason that they don't like change. This is one reason they don't like to go outside their small circle. They're very content. Look at the interviews with Katharine Hepburn. And here's this sophisticated lady, one of the greatest actresses ever, been all over the world. All she wanted to talk about in her dying days was her garden. That's all she wanted to talk about. She was obsessed with her little ass out there gardening. This is how Tauruses connect to their source, through the earth. Now I'm going to move on. Well, after a while, you can see the soul gets old and sodden and sedentary, and boom, now comes the Gemini. Now we're talking, because the next 2 signs are where the most of the work in the Exquisite Zodiac was done. Here's why. I had a Gemini mother, and I come in one night, open the door, and the living room would be here, and I come in another night, living room would be here. My Capricorn father didn't like that. Well, she just had to have change all the time. I never knew where the furniture was going to be, and it was dark out. She just had to have change just to have change. My dad's Capricorn. He wants to come in and sit down in his chair. Okay, so I started to ask myself, why is Gemini the way it is? And I looked all over the country. I talked to some of the finest astrologers I could find. I read everywhere I could read, and I found no answers. Well, Gemini's the twins, and that's why. Well, why are they the twins? Why is there one bull, there's one scale, there's one centaur, there's one goat, and there's 2 twins? Why? These things don't happen by happenstance. They happen because mythology gives us the truth of the archetype. So somebody said, well, you know, because it has dual moons, it has 2 different sides to it. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Why? You talk to how many Geminis, and they'll tell you, I have 2 sides. And if you talk to Gemini women, you'll really see it. And Liza didn't agree with me, but I still hold my ground on this one. Gemini women and men are more different than any other sign. And that's a safe statement because I've seen it so much. In other words, 2 Aries, 2 Scorpios, they're all different, they're men and women, but the difference between Gemini women and men is vast. Gemini women are much more sharper tongue, ready to use it with barbs on it, and Gemini men are much more playful and easygoing. I look back, I had like 5 friends in college are all Gemini men. So I don't know why, and you don't see this with the other signs. But let me get down to the issue here. You go into Gemini, it's the first time you're an air sign. Air signs about thinking, learning, communicating. So you see the baby's now a toddler. So in our original theory, here I am doing a lecture again after all these years. So here's the infant, and he's starting to put his foot in his mouth. And he's holding on to his keys and his playthings. And now he's got his mind. This is like the toddler. The toddler. Why? That's what the Gemini stage is about. He discovers air. So now what do you got? You got fire, you got earth, you got air. Well, what I finally realized, and I've really tried my best, and I really think it's explained in this book better than any I've ever read. And I still don't think I got it right, but I think I'm close. Follow me. Gemini is not water yet. Water comes next in the sign of Cancer. The first 3 signs are fire and earth and air. Here's why I think the twins. Almost every other statement made by a Gemini will contain the word interesting. And that's interesting. That's the secret to Gemini, the fact that they use the word interesting. Interesting means it's intriguing, but I don't want to touch it. That's what it means. So it's not that Gemini don't want to touch it. It's a Gemini, oh, isn't that interesting? Wow, your house is on fire. That's kind of interesting. Looks kind of orange. They're on a school bus. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of orange. This is where you're getting this perverted. The perverted side of Gemini is more perverse than any of the signs. Now, there are many Geminis that are just fine. This is why you're seeing Trump. I'm just as interested in writing a stupid little tweet as I am starting a nuclear war in Korea. And they're equivalent. They're interesting. One thing doesn't matter more than another because they're just both ideas. This is why he can't take a stance, because he's not stanceable. Now, it's further complicated by his moon in Sagittarius and many other factors. But getting back to just the central Gemini, what happens is this. Gemini explores this. Oh, the dandelion. Oh, what's this? Oh, the flea market. Oh, what's this? It's a car. Oh, the car can run over you. Oh, the car can take you downtown. Gemini is about learning this because the soul is vastly improving over the Taurus stage, which is small and content. What happens is this. Sooner or later, by being objective, the Gemini runs into, I got to become subjective. And it runs away. There's your twin. Objective, 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 subjective, run away. Objective, 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 subjective, run away. This is why Geminis run. It's why they're evasive. It's why they change the subject. Their nature leads them to subjectivity, which is the queen of subjectivity, is Cancer. It's all subjective with Cancer. How did you make me feel? Gemini runs into it just out of natural curiosity. Isn't that interesting? And they go, oh my God, that really means I'm going to be involved. I can't have that, so I got to back off. There's your twins. I'm studying you objectively. Isn't that interesting? I'm studying you objectively. Isn't that interesting? Oh, you touched me. You made me feel something. You got to run. It's not ready. It's not ready for feeling. So many Gemini people get butchered by others. You don't have any feeling, and you act like you don't have any feeling. Well, of course they have feelings, but it's not finessed. It's not worked out. It's not primed. It's not honed, depending on the rest of the chart. But after much work, I'm convinced that that's the basis of the twins. Now, I ain't saying I got it because it's awful tough. But discovering that was huge. It explained to me why they run. It's why they're evasive. It's why there were interesting in everything. And it's why they can have a, how do I say it? This was given to me years ago. Geminis take serious things lightly, and they take light things seriously. They just do. And this is why. And it's also safe. But it ain't safe. Because eventually you got to deal with the fact that you are a subjective in a subjective world, and that's what pops out to Cancer. Now we're into the thickest part of the zodiac, because the heaviest change of all, without a doubt, took place in Cancer. But I think you understand what Gemini is like now. And that's it. They're going to go and discover things and talk about it, but they don't want to get too heavy about it. They don't want to go deep. There's two kinds of learning. There's across the surface, which is Gemini. Then there's the deep learning, which is Aquarius. Aquarius is about master. Then there's the Scorpio, which is all about deep penetrating intellect. It's the soul, etc. As far as mind is concerned, the mind is lateral through Gemini and it's vertical through Aquarius. So you got the soul on fire in Aries, and he gets grounded in Taurus, and he gets to visit all the car garages, and he gets to go on all these tours, and he gets to do all these things. Wasn't that neat? What was that neat? Wasn't that neat? And all these libraries, and eventually the soul has to learn that it's got feelings. And when you got feelings, it's dangerous because you might drown. And this is the big contribution Liza brought in. What was the first space capsules? Mercury and Gemini. And they splashed down in the ocean. And that's why the name of the chapter, Liza named it Splashdown. Because whether you like it and you're circling that planet and you're seeing all these interesting things, eventually, just like Aries had to come down in Taurus, Gemini had to come down in the water. And when you come down in the water, what is your first thought? I'm going to drown. And this is the essence of Cancer. That's why Cancer holds on. That's why they're known as being so dependent. Because you would too if somebody tossed your butt in the middle of the ocean. You've never been there before. Can you imagine? So I've always said, my opinion, I've always said that the bravest of all signs are the Cancers and the Libras. And I'm going to tell you about why. This might end up going 2 weeks. I don't know. Anyhow, notice you've gone into Cancer, you crossed a thick line, you're now into the quadrant of development. The self is starting to come together now. You got the fire of Aries, you got the stuff of Taurus, you got the mind of Gemini, now you got the feelings. But when you have the feelings, what do you do with them? Well, we're going to talk about 2 parts, and the second part was absolutely astounding. What happened to us later when we did Cancer. In Cancer, it's known as the family, and you buffer yourself with the family, and you love to have kids, and you like your genealogy, and you love the family traditions, and all these things are very Cancer. But the main thing about Cancer is the soul picks up this intense sense of, I've got to protect myself. And that's the United States mistake. Now, we're Cancer, and Canada's Cancer, but they're both obviously 2 different kinds of Cancer. And this is the #1 problem in America is, I've got mine, go get yours. Republican Party is a Cancer party with a moon in Scorpio. So there's wonderful Cancer energy and there's terrible Cancer energy. Depends, both. All signs are like that. But here's where the revolution took place, and it took place after it was written. And it blew my mind. I said to myself, well, Leo is the sign of children, so how could Cancer be the sign of having babies? And if you know anything about Cancers, this is about mother and it's about child, and Leo is all about having kids and bragging about their kids. And as far as the essence of chapter 1, this is the baby, this is the infant who's got his big toe in his mouth, this is the toddler who's cruising around the coffee table, this is the young teen off at Spencer Gifts buying little cheap jewelry. He. Pajama party. This is the teenager. Okay? So what I realized was, how could Cancer be a mother when it's not even a self yet? That rocked the boat. That stopped there all the presses. Of course, Cancer is a self, and Aries is a self, and Taurus is a self, but on a larger scale, Cancer is a very dependent preteen. Well, it's got to be dependent because you just don't get tossed in the ocean and start swimming like Mark Spitz. So that's when we worked and we just did some hemming and hawing. Man, did we realize that this is why mothers are such a complex term. Is she my mother? Am I hers? Am I separate? Is she my mom? You've seen the issues where the child is so mothered that the child is never given freedom. That's the mother who's mothering improperly and not teaching the child what it needs, but teaching the child to stay dependent upon her. That's the sick type of Cancer. And it's very heavy. That's the moon. That's why the moon is all by itself compared to the other planets. And the educated, more evolved mother mothers the child just like bears and just like foxes, and then they chase you out of the pen. When you're ready to be weaned, out you go. It's not Cancer human like to do that. And Cancers, that's where you get into such complexity with, is the mom really living vicariously through the child or not? Is the mom really mature enough to let the child go? And man, is that complicated. And man, does that explain about 90% of my readings, which is why I always start with, what sign was your mother and how did you get along? So there are Cancer mothers. I had a best friend that had a Cancer mother. She was like my second mother. She was one of the most wonderful women I ever knew, and she let us go, but she welcomed us back. And Cancer is chicken soup and come back for Christmas, and it's all warm and fuzzy tradition. So it's all these wonderful things, but it has to have help. How does it get help? It gets help by where the moon is, what sign the moon is in, and other parts of it. But this is why Cancers, if you visit them, they have this attitude that's nonverbal of, I'm in my little circle that's safe, and would you please leave? Not because anything you did, but because my circle might be destroyed. It might be tempted or upset, and this is what's wrong with the USA. That's what happened when those towers came down, was our bubble broke. The myth of the oceans in Mexico and Canada, it broke. All of a sudden, we were vulnerable. And if Cancer is anything, it's about vulnerable or being invulnerable. So that's why I said it's the first sign that's really hard to be. It's hard. They don't have the comfort of residing in mental distance and becoming separate from things. They don't have the comfort of digging in the earth and just lying there content by themselves in a hobbit hole. They feel. Well, when you feel, you end up with the Cat Stevens song, ooh, baby, it's a wild world. You better be careful out there. He's the Cancer. He's telling you exactly. Because he's becoming emotionally vulnerable, which has to happen at some stage. So there's the problem with Cancer. Is the Cancer raising the child to be an appendage? And I love the fact that you need me, stay home with mama. Or is the Cancer healthy enough to let go of the child and celebrate its success and independence? So it's a tough question. It's a tough state to be. It's a hard sign to be because people pick on them all the time and they're very sensitive. If there's any sign that can't stand being mocked or made fun of, it's Cancer. And I tell Cancers, if they make fun of how you feel, tell them to hell with it. I have feelings, I'm moody, and that's the way it is. I'm moody. But when you get some of that good Cancer loving and that good Cancer support, it's the real thing, and it's what you really want. Okay, so I could talk about Cancer for hours because it was that dramatic of a change. And then we go into Leo. Hi, John. Sneaking up on me, eh? I have fun. I'm sitting in his chair pushing buttons, got a little camera, and see all these faces there. Yes, LP says it's hard to believe how we can delude ourselves. Yes, but you have to understand that this is how Cancer is. This is how Gemini is. This is how Taurus is at their essence. I had a reading from a woman today. She's living in her car. Wonderful young lady. She has no money. She's been outcast everywhere. Mother was all Cancer Leo, all the wrong types of Cancer Leo. The mother taught her that she was not wanted. So she's gone on, and she's in her 40s, 50s now, and she's learned that she's not wanted because the mother had too many needs for herself and inadvertently taught the child, you're not worth anything. So she wanted to talk. I said, look, there's no reason to talk. It comes down to whether you think you belong here or not, whether you think you deserve to be treated well or badly. It's that simple. It was very sad. Being an astrologer, you run across a lot of sad stories because you taste what the humans are going through, and it's not simple. So the Leo pops out of the mix. Remember I said the signs are reactions against, and this is really, really true. Inside every Leo is a Cancer, and it ain't that deeply buried below the skin. Just under the skin is that Cancer who's very hypersensitive, but they don't want you to know it. Here we go back to fire. We've now finished the 4 elements. Fire, Aries, Earth, Taurus, air, Gemini, water, Cancer. Now we know how to swim. Now we're going to go visit fire again. Now we're the teenager, and everybody knows teenagers know everything. This is the Leo stage. And the Leo stage, like all fixed stages, are very simple. The Leo stage is not about bragging. It's not about the limelight. It's not about the things you read about when people don't understand. The Leo stage is about gaining confidence over that stage of being so non-confident. Cancer is non-confident because it's sensitive, and it grows through bumps and bruises, and it hides in its shell underneath the rock, the crab. And the Leo comes out and it wants center stage so you can give him accolades. And it gets accolades and go, oh, I'm not that bad. And if you know a Leo, they're acting so secure, but inside they're very insecure and they're trying to draw accolades to themselves and limelight. It's very simple. Look what I did. Look what I did. I'm on stage. Come see me. Opposite, Aquarius. Come see us. We're on stage. Look at us. That's why the 6 polarities are so important to know. Well, I'm doing some blabbing. I'm not going to get this finished in one night. So be it. That's just how it goes. Part 2 next week. All right. So the Leo is all about gaining confidence. And they're very unsure of themselves. And that's why, if you're not careful, light and dark, if the dark side of Leo is they need more attention, need more attention. And that's why this is the sign. This is the sign of jealousy. Leo. It ain't Scorpio, it's Leo. Because I don't want you getting that promotion because I need one. I don't want you getting 88.7 of the attention because I want 100% of the attention. It's a very competitive sign, which Mr. Trump has on his rising sign. And the reason it's competitive is I had one of them there epiphanies writing the book. Just one day I went, poof, and I realized Leo's world is finite. And man, did that just fit right in. There's so much love, there's so much applause, there's so much recognition, there's so many promotions. I can't give you one because I need them. And when I hear, and I told you I learn a lot about people by their workplace. When I hear about problems at work, it falls into 3 categories. Most all problems at work are because of somebody's got jealous Leo energy. Most all of them. Then there's the critical Virgo boss, who's just a pain in the butt and you can't please no matter what. Then there's the devious Scorpio. Usually job problems are in those 3 categories. You can have wonderful Scorpio bosses, you can have wonderful Virgo bosses, but when there's a problem at work, it's usually one of those 3 things. The Leo jealousy is 80% of it. The Virgo perfectionism, unfeeling, and the Scorpionic power plays. Now, let me see a little nod of your head if this is kind of sinking in for you. It must be because your cameras are still turned on. And I implore you to read the book, and the book's free on my website. You have no excuse because it's free. Do not go read the book about Libra. Read the whole book. Because you'll understand what you can't understand what you are till you see what you're between. And I reread it a couple years ago. And Barbara, I must say, I was really fascinated. My most pleasure I got was the Libra chapter. I thought the Libra chapter was really excellent. If I can toot my own horn for a minute. Toot. All right. So the Leo, watch what happens here. So the Leo is very simple. You go out and get attention, and you go out and get accolades, and you grow in confidence, and you grow from it, or you become endless, bottomless pit. And you can't give them enough, and they want it all. And you've been around Leos like that. Chuck, my good friend, is one of these great Leos where Chuck, I deal with him. We deal with him a long time. You give him accolades. You give him good vibes. He says, thanks, man. He puts it to work. He learns from it. He moves on. 6 planets in Leo. But he has a nice balance because of his spiritual background. Fixed fire. Fixed fire. Did you ever try to put out a fixed fire? John F. Kennedy's grave has a flame that's been glowing since 1963. It's never gone out. That's a Leo. You can't push a beach ball underwater. You can't do it. That's what Leo is. They're buoyant. Okay, but that's what it's about. And now the real fun part begins, because this is the 3rd sign I warned you about, Virgos. Remember I told you that the story of the zodiac, in my experience, was the dramatic changes we went on through here in Virgo. Okay? The rest did not shock me. Okay, now, you've got the self and the stuff and the thoughts and the talking and the feelings, and it's all starting to get integrated and developed in the sign of Leo. And Leo is just like a teenager, where you go out and you act like you're cool, but you're really wondering if you are cool. Yeah, I think I'll have a beer. I'll have a smoke. Right? And the Leo starts to develop. And eventually, the soul that's ever evolving, which understands what's coming next intuitively, the Virgo doesn't want to hear it anymore. And that's what you get with Virgo. They don't want to hear your excuses. They cannot stand whining. I was talking to a Virgo friend the other day, and he said to me, "What do you want me to do? Put you on right here and just go like this?" I realized I was whining about something. I forgot who I was with. Get the violin out is exactly right, Susan. All right, so you got no more whining. Aries, me. And Taurus, where's my stuff? Where's my bedtime pillow? Oh, I'm so bored. There's nobody in the world more bored than Gemini. Look at our president. Can't read more than half a page. I'm bored. You're the president of the world. There is no president. There's a man. There's a little boy inside a little sandbox. There's a little boy in a sandbox. Did you see the State of the Union where he pretended and played president? Right now, he wants all his big trucks going down Pennsylvania Avenue, the big tanks with the big bombers, and it's all sandbox. So the Virgo says, no more whining, Cancer, no more whining, Leo. And the Virgo's all about the buck stops here. Because the reason why is we're going to cross this line. This is major. We're going to go from the me half to the we half. And we're going to go meet people, and we better get a haircut, and we better press our pants, and we better smell good, and we better look good. And that's why Virgo is so uptight about its appearance and its looks. And they don't need anybody commenting. You don't send them any criticism because they're plenty self-critical, thank you. But that's why the self all comes together in Virgo. All comes together, and with a true sense of service to others, but the sense is marred by right versus wrong. It's right versus wrong, rather than an intuitive sense that Pisces has. Virgos come to me, I told you, most of my readings are Virgo women. Very few Virgo men. And it's because they want to be right with the goddess. That's what it's about. They want to be right with the goddess. But where the change came in with Virgo is I don't believe that Virgo is ruled by Mercury. No doubt in my mind, Mercury rules Gemini. Mercury's mercurial nature is Geminian. So you got Mars ruling Aries. You got Venus, or the Earth, ruling Taurus. You got Mercury ruling Gemini. The moon definitely rules Cancer. The sun rules Leo. And I just couldn't buy the Mercury ruled two signs. Well, I've come to learn that Mercury has some impact, there's no doubt, on Virgo, but that's where I assign Chiron. Chiron is the new one shaped like a key, and it is like a meteor, except it's out beyond Saturn, and it connects the middle of the zodiac to the outer part. It's all explained in the book. And Chiron is the first astrologer. It's about the wound that doesn't get healed. And to me, it's all about the hero's journey. And that's a Virgo thing. And what I learned about Virgo, and Liza and I had the Virgo chapter done, and I picked it up and ripped it up. And the reason I ripped it up was I got tired of everybody talking about Virgo being the perfectionist. And if you want to learn a lot more about that, type in YouTube, type Rick DiClemente Virgo, and you will see a 90-minute video I made on this subject that I chopped it down to 30 minutes. And it's about how to deal with Virgo perfectionism. So I ended up writing a yes, Virgo has perfectionistic tendencies yet. Because Virgo does one thing. We all do one thing. Virgo fixes. Virgo fixes. Even when it ain't broke, Virgo fixes. That's the problem. But I realized there were two superlative adjectives that needed to come in front of perfectionists. And it was true. Purity and caring. That made sense. Now I understand what Virgo is. Yes, some Virgos are slobs, but Virgos stay after work. They come early, watch the baseball players, watch the basketball players, the hockey players. They come early to practice. They're late to leave. I got a Virgo on West Virginia's basketball team. He's there for hours before, and they're trying to get him to quit working so hard. And he said, "No, I'm not going to quit. That's how I get better." Got a Virgo coach. He's absolutely tenacious in people's faces. He works so hard. They care, which is most of them, why the women are nurses, and a lot of men too, and the men are carpenters. They care. You can't have that little piece that wasn't sanded. What do you mean? I got to sand that piece. And they just got this perfectionistic tendency. But where does it come from? And I realized when I did that, and this is going to take 2 parts, and I got to keep Deborah awake, and that's a challenge. Okay, I'm going to stop at Virgo, but anyhow, I realized this is why their skin is so pure. Almost every Virgo you see has a pure complexion, even in their 70s. They have really pure complexion, even the males, but the females especially, the Virgo complexion is so pure. They cannot stand being given a life and screwing it up. They can't stand people that don't work. They can't stand somebody that screws their life up, that doesn't take responsibility for it. They may not talk about it because being critical is a huge issue with Virgos. Huh, Susan? She are one. Virgos are critical, but they keep it to themselves, and they're really good at keeping it to themselves. A lot of you are typing, and I'm really not having the time to read. I apologize. Okay, we'll see you next time. Sorry we lost you, Chuck. Anyhow, so we ended up finding out that Virgo is ruled by Chiron. About 60% of modern astrologers believe that. Some are still not convinced. Remember, Mercury used to rule Gemini and Virgo. Now I believe it's ruled by Chiron, but in definitely some ways Mercury still has an effect upon it, there's no doubt. When you think about Mercury and thinking in Virgo, that's the analytical mind. The analytical mind. So you've really got about 4 or 5 places when you think about the mind. Watch this. You got Mercury ruling Gemini, which was thought begins here in exploration. In Virgo, the mind becomes analytical, black and white, and they're really good at it. They're really good employees because they're accurate. They know where every bean is in the office. Then in Libra, they're cardinal air. They're leaders of thinking. They help teach you how to think. They're social leaders. Scorpio, these are your Freuds. These are your Picassos, the deep thinkers. And finally, the master thinkers are the Aquarians. These are the geniuses. These are the ones that never leave that realm. And that's why I'm so obsessed with astrology, because I'm born with the sun here and Uranus here. And that Uranus will not get out of my face, and that's why I do thousands of charts, okay? So next week, we'll go into talking about the top half of the zodiac, but the Virgo changes that were brought about were very dramatic, and I've talked to a lot of them since. They've agreed. That sense of purity. That's why the Virgin. Yes, it can pertain to sexuality, and yet people with a lot of Virgo in them may not have a strong sex drive, or they may, but it's a matter of they respect what God has given them. It's very pure. It's very reverent. It's not to be spoiled. It's to be taken care of. And the caring. You're going to definitely, don't Virgos love nature? Yes, Virgos love everything. Nobody loves nature more than Aquarius, but Virgos do, yes. I think what we're going to do is shut this off from our YouTubers and say goodnight and say next week we'll pick up the second half, because I'm just not going to hurry through it, because it's important that you have this knowledge. And matter of fact, I've been hurrying just to get this far. So the unpluggers are saying goodnight to the YouTubers. Thanks for joining us.